Welcome to another episode of After Hours Ag Podcast. I'm Matt Fall, your host for today's episode. I've got a special guest with me, Tim Carberry. Now, Tim, why are we talking today?
Because you asked me if I would do a podcast, and I said, well, I don't know, I've never done one before, and an hour later, here we sit.
We are here on site at RedE.Ag, right? Tim has joined Tony Fast with RedE.Ag, and Tim is someone that I've enjoyed getting to know over the years. We've done a few projects over here at RedE.Ag. One of them was last year. We did the Air Guard blockage prevention system, and Tim and I got real close in that one.
As we froze together.
Yes.
In the building.
In the arc of the building.
The
mega shed that Tony's got over there. And we got to do some snorkels, some tubes, some accordion snorkel tubes. And if you haven't seen that video, make sure you get on our YouTube channel, RedE.Ag, and find that one. But Tim, I've got some questions for you today so that all the folks out there can maybe better understand your background, who you are, what you like, what you don't like, things like that. So Tim, if you don't mind, would you share with us a brief history of how you got to RedE.Ag, I guess?
We're actually, I was in Indiana, which is where my wife was from, and her family's there, and working for a farmer, and he was connected with Farmers Business Network, and they did I don't know, what do you call it, the conference, the FBN conference in Omaha, and we went to that every year, and one of the years Tony was actually on one of the YouTube panel at FBN, and that's how I first heard of Tony. And I grew up in southeast Wyoming, which is dryland wheat country, and so I just looked him up maybe a month after the conference. I looked him up on YouTube just to see what had changed in wheat country in the past 15 years since I'd been away from that area. And so that's how I found out about him. And of course, immediately the opening and how he words things, that they wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Christ, allowing them to be here in the blessings of Christ. That caught me right off. And then anyway, was just looking to get away, wanting to get back out west, and away from the humidity in Indiana. I don't know if you guys know that. Anyway,
I got to interrupt you real quick. Was there so you met Tony, and then how did you know that he was looking to hire? Was there
I didn't.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know at all.
Because I'm just envisioning that it's like American Idol. You got to audition. There's several months process, hundreds, thousands of people that are applying.
I seriously thought the same thing. I just decided one day, I was like, okay, if I want to move out west, if this is where God's calling us, and God's calling us away from the job that I had, it was, I'm just going to shoot from the hip, in the dark, blindfolded, backwards, whatever. I'm going to send him a resume. And I somehow found I don't remember how I found his website, and probably just off of the YouTube link, I don't remember. And I just emailed him. It had his email address on there, and I just emailed him my resume. And I was sitting on an excavator tearing trees out of a fence row, and I got this phone call from Wolf Point, Montana, and I thought, well, that's just weird. These telemarketers are really stretching out there for numbers and locations and all that. So me being me, I just answered the phone. I'm like, go ahead, caller, you're on the air. And he goes, what? and I said, you're on the air, caller. And he goes, this is Tony Fast. And I just, I'm sitting there running the excavator while on the phone, the phone in my shoulder and trying to run. And I shut that excavator off so fast when he said his name was Tony Fast. And we talked for, 15 minutes or whatever. And it turned out that because of Farmers Business Network and all that we had a mutual connection in Indiana. And so immediately after talking with him, I called a friend and we got to talk a little bit. Anyway, so nothing transpired. I think that was in May, and I don't even remember what year. probably May of 2020, I think. Maybe 21. Anyway, so that January, we kind of back and forth occasionally on Instagram. Mostly jokes, nothing talking about jobs or anything.
So it was the courting process then?
Or more or less, yeah. I mean, we had a lot of wind turbines around that area in Indiana, and so I'd always make jokes about our windmills versus Tony's windmill that's sitting here at the shop, and just little things like that. Or if I actually saw a windmill in Indiana that you're like, oh look, it's just like Tony's or whatever, and so anyways, then all of a sudden one January on a Saturday, I think it was. He started messaging me on Instagram and asking how things were, and I never really connected the dots of why he was all of a sudden messaging me, and then he told me Colin was leaving, and because Colin's dad's health was going downhill, and Colin was going to go back and help his dad, and so I just said, well, if you're still interested, I'd still be willing to give it a shot, but I also have a family that I'm more concerned about the job, and so we talked a little bit more, and then my wife and I in March of 22 came out here to visit and meet Tony and the girls and Amy and the whole family, and accepted the job. Like we were a stone's throw away from the house when we knew that this is where God wanted us, and we went home, called him back the next Monday or Tuesday and asked if he would still hire us, and said yes. So we accepted the position out here. Like I said, that was in March, and then we moved here in June of 2022. So
okay, very cool.
So that's the story of how it is an old social media that made this connection of all things.
You had social media going on even before you came here. It's just it maybe got amplified coming into this channel.
Like
that's
I mean, like
got a lot of activity.
My Instagram had 300 followers, and I was following 800, and now I have 1,500 followers because I'm that big.
It's the personality. If you guys haven't been around Tim or watched him on the videos, he's got an excellent personality that you just can't help but chuckle almost all the time.
Sometimes I'm surprised at what comes out of my mouth.
Yes.
I really am.
Yeah.
My mouth runs a whole lot faster than my brain, for sure. But it's just fun, and I like to make people stop and think about, what did he just say?
Yep.
So
now, were you here when I came that time with my brother and our two oldest kids? Jesse brought his oldest girl, Talia. I brought my oldest son, Russell, and we flew in to do the blockage system on that Bordeaux.
No, that would have been the spring before I got here, maybe. I don't remember. Maybe several months before I got here. I don't remember.
But when did we get the avalanche to you? Because that was my dad's avalanche. Did you know?
Right. That would have been 2022, but like June or July. I think June was when it was hauled out here. It was hauled to Glendive, and we went.
Was
to
it here
Glendive.
before you came?
No, it came at the same time, basically.
Oh, okay.
So like we got moved, and we hadn't even officially started. Like I was gonna start the next Monday, and we had kind of moved here like early, like on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and unloaded the moving trucks and all that.
Okay.
And then kind of got settled in, and then we decided as a family to go to Glendive to the dinosaur museum, and in doing that we picked up the avalanche the same day. So it was like, well, we killed two birds with one stone.
Nice.
So
maybe I'll just mention that as a interesting tidbit that it, like, I'm kind of connected.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting fact with how I'm a little more connected to Tim, just beyond just working with him, is my dad's Avalanche is actually your current farm vehicle. Is that right?
Yep. That's what I use to travel back and forth from my house to the shop or wherever we're working. Either our west bins or the main shop here. So it's
Yep. And
a res runner, as we call it, because
Really?
we live on the Fort Peck Indian Reservation, and so it really hardly ever leaves the reservation anymore, and we just tootle back and forth to work. It works for me.
All right.
It's the quietest gravel road vehicle, because we have all gravel roads around here. There's very few paved roads, and so it is 18 and a half miles from my house to here.
Okay.
And about 150 feet of it is paved road. The rest of it is gravel. So if that gives you an idea.
Mostly off-road.
Yeah.
Gravel road.
Yeah.
And so this is interesting. Before Tim was here, I had flown in with my twin brother. He had a pilot friend, and they were flying us in. What we're going to do, and what we did end up doing, was installing the blockage system on that 100-foot Borgo air seeder that Tony had just gotten. And I understand that was just before you came.
It was just before me.
And we had to get it done. We had to get it done in this certain narrow window. But the problem was, back in Fargo, there was a blizzard going on. Well, how do you take off in a small aircraft with a snowstorm? It was more like a snowstorm, but the night before, the weather was not looking good. The forecast was not looking good. And so I'm texting Tony, and he found out I have an Avalanche for sale, or my dad did. He's trying to sell his old Avalanche. And I was ready to drive this thing to Montana, actually. I was like, well, if I'm normally not scared of flying, but in that moment, I'm like, you know what? I would rather myself and my son, because we brought our oldest kids, my son Russell and Jesse's daughter Talia, on the flight too, but I would rather we drive through the night. Seems like less risk than flying this aircraft through a snowstorm and crashing. And so I'm talking to Tony, and I'm giving him the inspection of the vehicle that night before, and I'm ready to pull the trigger and I'll just drive it there. But we did end up getting on the plane, even though there was snow-covered windows at it. We found a narrow window. That's on YouTube, by the way. If you have a chance, go on our channel and check it out.
Tony's videos too of you flying.
Yeah.
Buzzing a grain bins.
Yes, you guys have it on the Fast Ag channel too, of us flying in. Of course, the weather here was beautiful.
Yeah, I think it was.
But we got it here.
But that was with Nacho.
Right.
He was from Argentina.
Yep, Nacho was here at the time.
Yeah, and Nacho, I remember, told me later that it was cold for him. Because he was not used to snow or cool weather or anything. But yeah.
Maybe why he's still not here, right?
No, right. That's why he went back to Argentina and didn't come back.
Well, I guess that's a good point. That's a good question. Lead into our next question of what keeps you here? What's something or what are the things that are things that you enjoy while you're here, or you see as worthwhile being here?
The family values. I mean, our church, for one, we've had some really neat connections with some friends of our church and stuff like that, and made some good family friends. So that's one. And our kids, like, they have a lot, like, these friends that we've met at church, including our pastor has kids that are my kids' age. And so our kids hang out all the time or as much as they can. My wife has 2 Bible studies a week now that she goes to, one with some ladies from her church and one with some ladies from just the Larsland Luster community. And so it's been neat to watch that come together for her and benefit her in her spiritual growth and stuff like that. And then for the kids to be able to let them run outside and not worry, because we lived on a road. We were about 10 miles away from Purdue University campus, and it was a very busy county road. It was a county road, but very busy nonetheless. And it was always nerve-wracking when the kids were outside, like, you know, especially stories that you hear. So many bad things happen in today's world, it seems like, but not that we were constantly helicopter parenting them and standing over them, but it was always in the back of your mind that the kids were outside. Make sure you can keep an eye on them or an ear to them. So to come out here and have the freedom where they can run through the trees around the house and 4-H projects and all that, you know, just to watch them grow in that and the work ethic that they've gotten out here, because we had chickens in Indiana, because who doesn't have chickens anymore? And but now, and we did some 4-H goats and stuff like that. Now, not only do we have the chickens and 4-H goats, but we have milk cows. And so the boys are our older 3 are boys, and they're out every day doing chores and helping milk cows, and it's kind of my wife's thing. She's headed that up, but the boys help her, and I help too. It's not like she does it all. And then my oldest daughter, who is only 7, now has 2 pigs, and they're a special kind of breed of pigs, and I don't remember what kind of breed they are, but so we have the whole homestead farm thing going on. It's kind of fun to watch.
That's a great way to grow up, and a lot of life skills that you can see or develop as
for sure
you are part of that, right?
Yeah, and that's, I mean, like, I grew up with that on a ranch in southeast Wyoming, and we had cows, and we even had one milk cow for a while, but I was too young to help with the milking when we had that. But not only horse sense, because we don't have horses, and I hope we don't have horses, but I'm not a horse fan, but the cow sense, the brains that you get from, it's a different mindset, or when you're around animals, how to work animals, how to take care of them, the responsibility aspect that it adds to your life and makes you who you are. And I think that's a quality that it will never leave them through their life. That should carry on throughout into their older years.
Yeah, so. Very good, very good. And we're talking, and that's exactly what I was thinking about, is the work ethic that you touched on, the responsibility. I had the horses growing up. We boarded horses. It's not that I had my own, but
right.
My brother and I split up who was going to do chores. I picked evening, he did mornings, and it didn't matter if it was snowing or I stayed up too late or whatever. I had to get out there and do the chores, and even if we're going to be gone, we had to line up who was going to take care of those horses and those animals. We had chickens too and some other animals at times, but it's a great way to go. Now, speaking of work ethic, what have you noticed here in the shop the last few days related to work ethic?
That I don't do much compared to what your guys have been doing. I've done a lot of standing around trying to stay out of their way. The work ethic there is a lot of difference, especially in the summer here. We just go because you have to, because that's your time to go. And we do slow down a little in the winter time and all that. But, you guys come in and you do have a smaller window because you have to get your guys back home. You're, 9-10 hours away from Fargo. Yep. So you have your guys to worry about, and you got to get them home. So they've really got to hammer down, so to speak.
Yep.
And get
this is our time to make hay. We've got 2 drills that have been getting rebuilt. We're actually just finishing up the second one. So if you hear some noises, that's what it is. We've got the torque wrench beeper going off in the background and some impacts. Yeah, what's really interesting is we started with a red machine, which is not an unfamiliar color here at RedE.Ag.
All right.
We had the Case Precision Disc 40, but it's really an SDX. A newer version of the SDX, and we got that mostly squared away, got it out of here. That was easy to get in and out comparatively to this John Deere, which is a couple feet wider. And someone that Tony knows was needing a rebuild on his John Deere 1895 drill. It's a 3-rank machine, 43 feet wide, and we were able to make the connection. It was really cool how Tony had the heated shop available. And Jeff Pattison actually is the other guy who was needing this done, and he was able to tow his here. Now, getting that in the building was quite an interesting task. And in fact, we've even had some social media engagement on that when we posted. You're trying to get it in now. What was your role in getting this John Deere drill in the shop?
My role was on the Bobcat, on the back end, dragging the right side of it sideways. We pulled it in sideways, and so I was in the Bobcat pulling, which was kind of a blessing in disguise. It's not fun because the way the loader arms were on the Bobcat, I couldn't see anything, but at the same time I was stuck because we have a door on our skid loader. I couldn't get out. So that's just the way it was. And so I just had to sit there and watch everybody else do all the hard work.
I think I figured out it took us about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes to to get it
Was
in
it
from
that
start
long?
to finish. Yeah. I was flying the drone, so I also was not very... I was not contributing so much as you were.
Right.
As Tim was in the skid steer, we've been documenting a lot of this in and out and all the projects out there, the 2 seaters being rebuilt, a lot of videoing, social media, things like that. We want to get that message out there. It's really fun to just share what we're doing. That's really what it's about, is we're just sharing what we're doing. And I've got a question for you, Tim, on that side of when did you start picking up a camera and actually filming?
Not until I came here. I mean, I did some, like I said, with Instagram on my own, but nothing ever serious. A few jokes and a few dumb things. And oddly enough, I should take this back because I think it would have been about the same time that the Minnesota millennial farmer Zach Johnson was up and coming. Like he wasn't super popular, but his name was definitely out there and people were starting to watch him. My boss's wife in Indiana said, you should grab a camera and video what you do and just put it out on YouTube and see. And I said, no. I was like, that's just money that we don't have, all this other kind of stuff. And she even said, just put it on the company credit card. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. And 4 or 5 years later, here I am on YouTube and, right in this YouTube world, having watched Zach Johnson hit 1 million subs and watching Welkers and Larson Farms become who they are, and I haven't met I met Scott Welker is the only other one I met of the big farm tubers, and then you guys. Outside of that, and I haven't even met your brother, Jesse.
Yeah,
just you.
You're not missing much. I look just like him. I look better though. So.
Right. But I haven't. I'd like to meet Nick Welker. I'd like to meet Zach Johnson and the Larsons. Just to say I met him, I guess. But but I'd be, other than that, I'd never picked up a camera, and I'm still terrible at it. I still have to remind myself I'm about to start a project. I need to put in something, or I started it and I videoed a little start, and now all of a sudden I'm done. I'm like, crap, I got nothing in the middle.
Yeah. This isn't going to be a good video if I don't do something more.
And then there's other times where it's just like, oh, I should do something, and I walked around for 45 minutes looking for my camera because I have no idea where it's at, and you just, so it's kind of weird, but at times, but it's, like I said, I'd never had done anything, and so it's, the experience is a little different, especially when you are walking into the grocery store and somebody walks up to you and you've never seen them before, and they're just like, hey Tim, how's it going, blah blah blah, and then they start talking about something, and you're still trying to figure out who they are and why they know your name, and they're talking about things, and then all of a sudden they'll say, I saw on the video or something, and they're asking you questions. Well, then I can switch hats and say, oh, okay, it's YouTube stuff. And then
not someone you're supposed to remember. And
right.
Oh, I went to high school. with you.
Right? Yeah. Were you at church this Sunday and I shook your hand? and then but then I have to remember that they're asking me questions about the video that just came out. Well, have I seen the video yet? And if I did, that's 2 or 3 weeks old to me. Because by the time Tony is able to put it together and get it out there, and so I'm having to all of a sudden go back into my archives and figure out. And then my other concern is, like I said before, my mouth running so much faster than my brain. What did I say? Was did I offend this person? Was it funny? What what do I do? And so I feel cornered for that second, and then it's like, who cares? Let it go, and then you just move on from there. So it is a little weird, but
yeah, what an interesting era of social farming.
Yeah,
social media, social farmer, stuff. So it's just incredible to see this happen. And a lot of people, I think, have that perception that you just pick up a camera and you're an instant success. It's easy. You don't really have to spend much time, but I tell people it's another full-time job. If you do it consistently, let's say 1 to 2 videos a week, it's just like you said, you got to think it through. You got to go, okay, I'm looking for content, or I want this certain content on my channel. And now I have to think through, okay, I better get the camera. I better get all the shots. I need to try to make it so it's engaging and not boring.
Yep.
You got to get the right amount of updates in it and B-roll or whatever you add.
Throw humor. Keep it.
Try to make it funny so you're not boring, right? And anyway, it's very interesting. And I've even had an interesting time and an enjoyable time networking with these guys, both Welker's, Fast-Ag mostly, but even Millennial Farmer. He runs a different camera. And even Sunny Farms, I ask him, like, what cameras do you use? The mics, and like, oh, I'm having issues with this equipment. And pretty much everybody sympathizes. There's certain ones to stay away from, and there's certain ones, there's always pluses and minuses.
And you can use that, like, you know, like farmers talk to each other and say, hey, you know, this worked in my field, this worked in my field, blah, blah, blah. You know, it may not work in your field, but it worked in mine. You can do that with camera equipment.
Exactly.
You know, like, well, this worked in my world, but you know, for my YouTube, but not for yours. And like, well, maybe I'll give it a shot. And well, maybe I just threw a couple $100 away, but it was worth a shot. You know,
it's on the company credit card though.
There you go. It's a write-off.
That's what I said when I crashed my drone.
It was a write-off.
Like, well, at least it wasn't my money.
Right.
Wait, it is my money. It's still my business.
But it's a write-off.
It is a write-off, but I'll try not to crash it again. Sorry, Jesse.
But no, it's you know, you see a lot of that in any industry. You know, this can work for me and vice versa, and sometimes it works, and if it doesn't, tough.
Have you found any negatives with the videoing, with being more out there and also the time and all the hassle it takes to video?
Not really. I mean, you immediately have to tell yourself to not pay attention to the comments. I mean, yes, there are some comments that are uplifting and helpful. Excuse me. There are some comments that are uplifting and helpful, but then there are some people out there, there's just armchair farmers, and they're after you because they can be. They got that kind of time, I guess. I don't know. But it's odd because in that world, I can tell you the names of guys that have attacked me. I'd have to think about it, but I remember one for sure, and his username or whatever on YouTube. I don't remember all the numbers and all that afterwards. I can't remember a single name of anybody that said, I really like seeing Tim do this, but I can remember that guy that just wanted to, he unsubscribed because he hated me so much. Like, more power to you now that I think about it. I don't think if that guy's going to hate me or some other YouTuber subscriber is going to disapprove of my being on camera so much that he's going to unsubscribe, I doubt that's going to be the end of Fast-Ag Montana YouTube.
Now,
so
if
let him
we
go.
saw a trend that way, we might be concerned.
Right.
A couple. But yeah, no, it's a good point.
You just got to let those go. And, you know, it's like anybody that's going to tear you down they're only doing that because they're jealous. 9 times out of 10, they want to be you. And you have to, and it's not saying that to gloat myself, but the person who respects you, no matter what's going on, even if they don't agree or they don't like what you're doing, they're not going to rip you apart for it. Mm-hmm. They might add suggestions, but if they're going to tear you apart, they're doing it for all the wrong reasons. Let them go.
It's a good reminder that we really have to be careful with our words. There's times that I've even gotten frustrated and I just type or say or just do something that is just a reaction and it's unfiltered. And you made a really good point that the positive has to, you have to do so much positive to make up for a negative comment or word out of anger. And even that, think about it with our kids too, how relevant that is, how damaging that can be, but how rewarding it can be if you are more positive and encouraging.
And oddly enough, like Tony and I have, we'll come in on, if he releases a video on, it comes out Sunday morning or whatever, I don't know, or over the weekend. And we come in here on Monday morning, we'll sit and talk for a few minutes or sometimes an hour. And we'll go through some of the comments. Like, we'll talk about, did you see so-and-so's comment? Do you see this comment about this? Sometimes you see them, sometimes you don't. But we joked about, we should just start a burner account so we can just fire back at these idiots. Like we can put you in your place so fast because we know. But yet, literally listen to that, and then basically heard a speech about how the tongue is sharper than a two-edged sword. It's like, oh, okay, yeah. It would be fun to start a burner account and nail these guys to the floor, but is it worth it? So now you're dwelling on that. You've made their nasty comments your idol if you're going to dwell on that. So just blow it off and laugh at it. So we do have fun. I do have fun with the comments now.
Yeah.
I laugh at them.
Just kind of keep doing what you're doing and don't let those affect you too much.
Right. And my wife has been my greatest coach in that and saying, don't respond,
Mm-hmm.
and because I've wanted to. And still there's times where I want to respond politely and professionally, but I don't. Because it's not worth my time.
And we all want to be liked, right?
Right, yeah.
But
who doesn't?
It's important to remember.
That's why I became a YouTube farmer, is so that I could be liked.
We got to remember that, what our value isn't in the views, the subscribers, all that stuff. It's really in who we are as a person, created by God.
Right.
And it's really neat the farming community, I think, really embodies that still very much.
Right.
We love our customers, the farmers. They're the best customers in the world to work with. And so we just really enjoyed working with farmers, and you work with a farmer, and it's just been great to connect with you, Tim, on this topic and what you're doing here. And thanks so much for sharing your story with us.
Yeah.
But I have one more question for you, Tim, and it's this. What are some misconceptions that you hear from people in the city, people who aren't in the farming community, that you would like to, or you could correct or
You want the list?
clarify? Well, we've only got a few minutes, so let her fly.
No. Number one would be a lot of the chemistry stuff that, pesticides that we spray. No, we're not out there drenching your grain in harmful chemicals, but yes, we do use harmful chemicals. And you read the label and you follow that label, or you can get in a whole lot of trouble, and not only financially but with the state chemist as well. So yeah, you have to pay attention to that. The myth, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, of farmers are just out there raking it in, making millions off of government subsidies plus their crops and their insurance and all that. I'm sure there's some that are milking the system. Everybody, there's a lot of other departments of the government that people can milk it dry and choose to do so. And I'm sure there's some farmers that are doing that. But for the most part, farmers want to farm. They want to go out, they want to raise their crops, they want to see it grow, they want to see the success from it, and they want to pass it on to their kids. So, which goes back to the chemistry end of it. And the soil aspects. The majority of farmers want to hand down their crop or hand down their business, their farm, to the next generation. Why would they destroy it? Why would they ruin it for their kids? It makes no sense.
Yeah.
So why would people continue to think that farmers are out there destroying the earth? They're trying to do the best they can. They may be wrong. They may be doing it wrong. They may be doing it wrong in my eyes. They may be doing it wrong in everybody's eyes, but they're doing what they think is right for with what they have for their family, to benefit their family. Are they doing it to feed the world? Well, they're trying to keep themselves surviving, because that's what it is. And I know it was a lot harder to survive as a farmer 100 years ago or even 50 years ago. It's a whole new ball game than that was. But at the same time, it's the same thing that they were dealing with in the 70s and in the 20s. Is they're just plugging along, trying to go day to day. The stresses are there. The numbers may be different than they were 50 years ago or 100 years ago, but they're still growing.
Yep. What do you think the average hours per week is for you and Tony?
We try and keep it 40 to 50 during the winter time, but yeah, we're going 60 plus in the summer when we're going. Obviously seeding and harvest is way beyond that.
Right. I mean,
probably
your
I'm
only
salary,
counting.
so I don't have to keep track of my hours, and I don't. Being paid salary probably don't want to keep track of my hours.
Yep.
But,
Yeah, you start to think I'm not making very much per hour.
making $7 an hour. But no, yeah, you crank it out, and my wife and kids feel that when I'm gone all the time. But one of the blessings of Tony, and I had this blessing at the farm that I worked at in Indiana too, was we don't work Sundays. We don't turn a wheel on Sunday. I know Tony has with haying and stuff like that. He's never once asked me to do anything on Sunday, and like I said, same with my boss in Indiana. He never once asked me to do a thing on Sunday, and that's a lot. That one day of reset to your family, where you may spend half the day sleeping, or you may spend half the day catching up on little honeydew projects around the house. But that half a day, church in the morning and then doing whatever you want in the afternoon is the world,
Day of rest.
Yeah,
It's biblical.
Exactly.
It's like God designed it that way.
I know. Odd.
Yeah.
It's like he knew what he was doing. It's like he knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thanks so much, Tim. It's been a real treat to have you and get to know you. And I know we'll stay connected. And we're going to get out there and get this air seeder out. I think they're almost wrapped up here.
Yeah, we should get to work.
We should probably get up and get to work. Yeah. But no, thanks everyone for listening to this episode of After Hours Ag Podcast. Would you please leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening? It just really helps get the message out there, and share it too. Comment to whoever who might want to benefit or hear this, including, you might want to send it to Tony Fast.
I don't know if he wants to hear everything I have to say.
Well, we're going to get out and get this cedar out of this shop and get moving so we can get back home to our families. And again, thanks so much, guys. We'll see you next time on After Hours Ag Podcast.